Welcome back to Retire Southern, where we share authentic experiences and meaningful connections from the heart of the American South. Our message is simple. Life's too short to wait for someday. Don't wait for retirement to start living. I'm your host, James Lewis, and on this episode, I'm sitting down with a true Southern storyteller. From growing up in Thomaston, Georgia, to writing #1 country hits with the Zac Brown Band, from jazz studies to children's books, he's blended music, family, and creativity into a life's work that inspires both adults and kids. He's a Grammy-winning guitarist, songwriter of Colder Weather, Knee Deep, and Sweet Annie, and author of multiple children's books, including his latest release with Malcolm Mitchell, Every Amazing Story. Coy Bowles, welcome to the Retire Southern podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I really appreciate you inviting me into your home and sitting down with me today. Let's start with your growing up and your background.
Yeah.
That's cool. So you grew up in Thomaston, Georgia, which if people aren't familiar with Thomaston, it's kind of in between Columbus and Macon.
West Central Georgia is the
West
proper.
Central.
Yeah.
So growing up in Thomaston, Georgia, what are some of your favorite childhood memories?
So my childhood was a southern small town broke blue collar version of Wonder Years.
Okay.
So very much the riding the bike around in the neighborhood, but everybody in my neighborhood was, construction workers or blue collar guys who were, kind of probably paycheck to paycheck.
Right.
I didn't really know much about that side of life as a kid because my parents are two hippies that fell in love at a very young age and are still happy and in love to this day. So I grew up in a house literally just surrounded by love, and they're soulmates, man. I mean, it's kind of incredible to grow up in the kind of the house that I grew up in. And they're both very communicative people, not only just in life in general, but with their emotions. So there wasn't a lot of arguments and fighting and stuff. It was just a lot of laughing, a lot of love, and a lot of being real vulnerable and honest with each other about what's going on. And they also, as a kid, they shared that with me a lot. So I'm an only child. So, if there was an argument or something like that, then my mom would come up and be like, your dad's going to go outside and tool around the yard a little bit. We're fine. We just had a disagreement, and he needs some space and I need some space, and we love you and everything's fine, And I just remember being like, okay, cool. And then after a while, I just got kind of used to being included in on these kind of conversations. But as I got older, I realized that that's not how most families interact with each other.
Yes.
And so it was one of the bigger gifts that I've ever been given, honestly, is my parents' ability to communicate with each other about hard things and about emotions and also being high functioning emotional people, you know? So that being said, let's rewind and paint a picture of what my childhood was like. I'm growing up in a pretty, redneck environment, a lot of BMX bikes with cans stuck in the back tires, trying to make them sound like motorcycles. A lot of homemade ramps being jumped, and a lot of random dogs following this whole group of kids around the neighborhood as we got home and set loose. And then you would hear around dinner time, everybody's mom start screaming everybody's names, and everybody had to kind of get back before it was too late, and then have dinner, and then try to maybe get a little bit more of the baseball game in before sundown kind of thing. So, real classic American childhood, just in a probably, not necessarily low income environment, but not middle class really either. That's kind of important part of it is that, we a lot of the families I think were rubbing nickels together to get by. Now that I look back on it, including my parents. So, but I didn't know any of that growing up. I mean, because I think some of the other kids in the neighborhood probably felt some of that through arguments, about money and things of that nature. But my parents just found a way to be happy, kind of thing. And but I grew up around two really hardworking people. My dad's a carpenter by trade, and was always somebody who took a lot of pride in what he did, and was a master carpenter. My mom went on to be a financial aid director of Columbus State University. Okay. So like kind of really interesting environment. Like dad's this like very charismatic, never meets a stranger kind of, like education was not at the highest part of his path, but developing a trade was something that he learned at a very young age, and then like got into the master quality of that building as he got older. Whereas my mom was somebody who devoured books on the daily and ended up going on to get her master's degree. So I came from like, they're pretty polar opposites, but my dad's sense of humor has been the glue for our family like my entire life. He's just a really funny guy, very witty. Amongst all of his friends, he's the guy who's like going to keep everybody kind of chuckling and keep it kind of moving forward and telling stories, but never kind of at his own expense, really. He walks a fine line. He's got a lot of character and quality, and a lot of like, he's a man's man kind of thing. So he's not like a fool or anything like that, but he's definitely someone who has a very kid-like quality to him, as well as being like a real stand-up, like, man's man kind of thing. He's definitely like, take a scrape and half his arm be cut off, cut open or something like that. And he's like, I'll get it in a second, like we'll figure it out kind of thing, Right. I actually loved how I grew up. I mean, I have a lot of friends that I'm still friends with, and I've known them since I was like a baby, honestly. Like my best friend, this guy, Rustin Shiflett, my dad and his dad were great friends, and my mom and his mom have always been great friends. And he's out on the road with us as our stage manager, and has really been for like 15 years. Yeah. And I've known that dude since I was 6 months old. And there's only a couple people in my life to where, if anything goes down, he's going to be the dude who's going to be there. And, he's one of the three, including my dad kind of thing. So, but I still stay in touch with a lot of people that I grew up with, which has been really fun to kind of like, grow outside of Thomaston, Georgia, and see the world and go to all 50 states and travel all around playing music and everything else, but still, be on a text thread with a bunch of wahoos that I went to high school with, it's pretty fun,
No, totally. So when did you first get into music? When did you first learn how to play the guitar?
Yeah. So my mom, I started listening to music. I got a tape of the Stray Cats playing Stray Cat Struts. Yeah. Or playing that song, the Stray Cat Strut. And I really liked the way that music sounded for some reason. I liked the way they dressed in the music video when I got to see it on MTV. They played a lot of music back then, like Eddie Money and Hall & Oates and stuff like that was kind of played in the car with my mom. I really liked Eddie Money a lot, just like his kind of raspy voice. Hall & Oates was a little too candy poppy for me. I kind of always leaned into like the more like real stuff when I was like first listening to music. And, 2 tickets to that raspy voice. I was like, that's cool, grittier, man, So anyway, fast forward, I'm in the car with my mom going to school. No, actually, my mom comes home one day and she's like freaking out. She's like, there's a song on the radio and you've got to hear it. She was like, you're just going to love it. It's like, I can't wait for you to hear the song. It's like one of the coolest songs I've ever heard in my life. And I was like, okay, sounds great. So every morning we listen to the radio on the way to school. And one morning, like maybe 4 or 5 days later, she's like, this is it. Cranks the radio up and it's Pearl Jam playing Alive. And I just remember that opening guitar riff, the way his voice sounded, the melody being so kind of long and drawn out. It was like a surf, like a wave you kind of rode, with things. So that was the moment for me, man. I mean, I had been listening to music. I'd got, Nirvana had been out on the radio, and I'd started playing guitar at 11, and all of this stuff was happening. But it was in that moment when I heard that song where I was like, I don't really know what this is, but I really like it to a level that I can't really explain. And so I've always had this ability to like hyper focus. It's probably like would be considered like some form of ADHD or something now, but I can completely forget time. So when I was a kid, I would go play guitar for like, 30 minutes in my head and really about 3 or 4 hours.
Right.
And my dad would come upstairs, every week and be like, son, you sound great on that guitar. You got to learn a new song. I can't hear Smells Like Teen Spirit one more time. Like you got to learn a new song. And so whenever I found Pearl Jam, I learned that whole album, 10. Yeah, 10. Yeah. And I also learned, Nevermind, the first Nirvana album really well. And then and just opened up this whole box of, how cool it was to be, finding out what cool was at that age range, from 11 to, when I graduated high school, like having skateboarding in my life and being involved in that world and following those magazines and those kind of trends as fashion and stuff go in a small town, but also having access to, CDs and through music, and then buying guitar magazines and finding out about like, okay, this guy that I'm really into riding skateboards had a Misfits shirt on, and the Misfits album is in the back of this guitar magazine that you can send in a $7.99 check and you will get, a tape like 15 weeks later, kind of thing. So that was a big part of my life, was like kind of puzzle piecing all of this different information together and researching, okay, my favorite skateboarder has on, a Mother Love Bone shirt. What is that about? Right. And so the way to get that would be to go to the back of these magazines and buy tapes. But, it was like snail mail on 1,000. So it literally, you would have forgot that you bought the tape by the time it showed up. Right. And I was so poor and broke back then to where, I got to buy like one of these a month. And when it came, you didn't really have the option to like not listen to it or not like it. You would listen to it, and if the first time around you were like, dude, this isn't what I thought it was going to be, you were like, well, this is all I have. Yeah. So I'll listen to it again. And then, like that's when the third or fourth, fifth time around, you're like, actually, that is pretty dope. Like there's something about it that I do like. So, that was kind of, started playing music at 11, got hooked on it by, Pearl Jam really being this kind of the thing that started the fire. Mm-hmm. And then it just went kind of crazy from there as far as diving into all of the different genres that surrounded all of the things that I was into, whether it be punk rock or whether it was like my dad's old records with, Cream and Hendrix and all that stuff, So
did you take formal lessons, or did you just learn how to play by ear and reading tab?
Yeah, reading tab and playing by ear. It's a funny story. Kind of quickly, my mom told me I had to pick an activity to learn during the summer so I wouldn't get in trouble. Mm-hmm. And I just kind of refused to pick an activity. And one day she said, if you don't pick something by tomorrow, I'm going to pick it for you. And I was like, cool, who cares? Like, I don't really.
Whatever, Mom.
Yeah, whatever, Mom. Totally, yeah. And so I didn't pick, and she said, you're going to play guitar. And I was like, guitar is so uncool. Nobody wants to play guitar. Who plays guitar? It's so dumb, And I was like so against it. And so they went to a pawn shop that my dad's buddy owned. He got me this really cheap guitar. And I started taking guitar lessons from this class at Gordon College in Barnesville, Georgia, which my mom was a teacher / about to be financial aid director of that college. And I hated it. I hated coming around the mountain. I was like, I came back the first lesson and I was like, they're making me learn coming around the mountain. Like it was like a punch to the face, like this is the stupidest song ever, dude. I listen to good rock and roll music, man. I'm not playing coming around the mountain, but somewhere in there, they taught us how to play House of the Rising Sun.
Oh my God. Are you serious?
I guess it's kind of like a traditional song more than I had thought of or something. So, and then I just remember being like, dude, this is kind of cool. Yeah. It's like, it's a little haunty feeling, the melody and that thing. So, but I quickly told my mom, like mid-course, that I'm I'm not doing this. Like, I don't want to do it. I'll do anything else. Like, I'll cut the grass like 1,000 times before I go back to this guitar thing. But at this point, I had a guitar.
Yep.
I had, a CD player or cassette player in my room. And then I taught myself how to read tabs. And then after that, it was just like plucking away and figuring it out, self-taught kind of thing.
That's amazing. So the reason why I reacted the way I did, that's the very first song that I learned how to play.
Yeah, cool.
It was House in the Rising Sun. And I still remember all the chords. Do you still have the first guitar that you ever got?
I have the first electric guitar that I ever had, which is Ibanez, like EX series. It's like a black pointy head guitar. And it served its purpose. I mean, as far as like it did, it was cheap, came with a practice amp, and I learned hundreds of songs on that thing, you know. I haven't plugged it up or cranked it up, or anything in a very long time, but probably about 3 years ago, I got it from my parents' house and brought it to my house and plugged it in through like, one of my Marshall amps or something here and gave it a real run for its money. And it played, man. It did its thing. Plays. Yeah.
So you formed a punk rock band at 13 called Betty Doom. What did you take away from the garage band days?
Yeah, it was a very interesting time because my parents were so cool and I lived way out in the country at this time. I left the neighborhood that I was previously talking about where we all rode bikes, and my mom and dad had always wanted to have like land and like kind of be away. So when I was around the same age, around 11, my dad and built our own house. He built the house that we live in with some help from friends, but mostly on his own, with me kind of helping him at the time too, which was really dope. So I'm stuck out in the middle of this like 40-acre field kind of thing in the middle of nowhere now with a guitar. And there's not much else to do out there. There's no like friends around or anything. So I played a lot of guitar, and I quickly tried to figure out, how do I get people to come to my house? Okay. Because I don't have a way to get to anybody else's house without my parents taking me in town. But if they can come here and hang out, then we could. So one of the things was I talked to a buddy. His dad played drums. He got his dad's old drums. Okay. We talked a guy into getting a bass and a bass amp, and they all lived at my house.
Right.
And so in my room, my bedroom, and my parents didn't care if we played loud, and they could care less. I mean, they were literally like watching TV while we're upstairs cranking through Green Day songs and like Misfit songs and all this stuff when I was a kid. And so my buddies would come out to my house, and when they would leave, I would play their instruments. So I learned how to play bass. I learned how to play drums, and I would crank up my radio and play what they were playing. And, and sometimes it would be like I had practiced the drums, so I would show them like, okay, this is what they're doing, during that time. Like I would, this new song we're going to learn how to play. I'm going to sing it. This is how the drum beat goes. This is how the bass part goes, kind of thing. And then they would, it's kind of unfair because I was able to shed it. I had the instruments at my house. Right. But my big takeaway from it was a couple of things. There was this gigantic scene going on in Barnesville, Georgia. There was this place called the Depot. Okay. And this is a hidden secret that's part of a humongous amount of people's lives, but is not necessarily talked about that much. But at one point, there is a self-contained, thriving rock and roll, like punk scene. And I say punk kind of with like quotations mark because it was more than that. But there were really no adults involved. Mm-hmm. We rented out this place in downtown Barnesville called the Depot. It was an old train depot. They would let us rent it for next to nothing. One of the girls would take money from the front, and then somebody would schedule the bands in there. And, every Saturday we would rent this place out and we would swap out bands in there. And at like 14 or 15 years old, my parents, like I had a great repertoire with my parents about not getting in trouble. So they would let me drive with my 16-year-old buddies over to this place to listen to music, knowing that I wasn't going to drink or do anything I didn't, need to be doing. Mm-hmm. But also it was like heavily self-governed, because if people did drink and break stuff, then they would be like, you're out, you can't come back in. Right. So it was like, there was this, that was one thing that's really cool about the punk rock community is like the no BS kind of thing is, there's a certain standard of like, yeah, we want to break stuff, but don't break it so we can't come back here again, which was really dope, man. So there was this crazy thriving scene of all of these local bands of these kids that were anywhere from 15 to 16 to 20 years old. And they were just constantly opening up for each other. And it would be packed out, dude. I mean, there'd be 100 people in this place.
That's amazing.
And it became this thing. And I was so unbelievably lucky to be a part of that scene and feel like what it's like to be a part of a community, even though I was very young and very new puppy and very just like, let me stand and watch and not try to interact too much. But later on, some guys in my hometown ended up forming a band, and I could play guitar well enough to play bass in that band. That was like the first time I was involved in that scene in kind of like a more legitimate way, like through those guys.
Okay. So actually playing at the Depot with those
yeah,
guys?
Yeah.
What was the name of that group?
PMF.
PMF.
Yeah. And so my dad called it the cussing band because the the lyrics and everything it was rage. You know, we were angsty teenagers at that point, you know? Fast forward, man. The thing that I got away from, back to your question though, all this stuff is so awesome to me to talk about. So I'm sorry if I'm long-winded, but it's just,
You're totally fine.
I don't get to talk about this part of it very often. It's so much of it is the foundation of everything, is that like I saw Nirvana play on Saturday Night Live, and I think it was Drain You, where there's a section to where they just make noise in the beginning. And I just gotten turned on to like Sonic Youth and some other groups to where they have songs, but in the middle of the song, they make, like, for lack of better words, like noise.
Yes.
And during this, I saw it done on TV. I saw, you know, Chris Novoselic and Kurt Cobain and Dave Grohl play a song, and in the middle they just went crazy, and then they went dagga 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 dagga, and then they went back into the song again, and the drum fill was the cue. So they did whatever they wanted to do, and then there was like cue drum fill, play the rest of the song, and that was the first time I got it. And I went back and I told my friends, I was like, okay, we're going to play this song. In the middle, we'll just do whatever the hell we want to do. And then you're going to do this. And then that's when we know to play it out. But the wild thing about that is like that in its sense is like jazz. Like you play the head of a jazz tune, you play the melody, you have kind of a free form experience during the middle, and then you play the head melody again to get out. If you go and look at Allman Brothers tunes, they play In Memory of Elizabeth Reed, or they play like Whipping Post is a great example. You got this whole tune, then they solo during the middle, and you can go anywhere you want to, and then da 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 da. That's the same equivalent to the drum fill,
right? And
that's how you get out of the song, and then you play structure from there out. And so I remember being, 14, 15 years old and just being like, dude, I just kind of found the keys to the universe. On you have structure, you lose structure, and then you just find a way to get out of it that everybody knows, and then you're like kind of home free. Yeah. And that was when I, like, everything kind of came together for me as far as understanding music at a higher level, So my what I take away from the punk rock days is being a part of a scene was massively important, and has always been important to me to be a part of like this thriving thing, which I was later a part of in Atlanta, and also taking away this idea that, it's about song and then getting away from the song and getting back to the song. But I didn't want to just make noise. I wanted a song. I wanted something that people could remember and a melody that was catchy, but I also wanted to freak out in the middle, kind of thing. So
yeah, cut loose.
Yeah.
So you go from Thomaston to the University of West Georgia.
Yeah.
And then from there you go to Georgia State to study jazz. Was it a jazz program at Georgia State that pulled you away from West Georgia, or how did that go down?
I was studying biology in West Georgia.
Right.
And that was where I met Zach. He was going to West Georgia.
So you guys crossed paths while you were there?
Yeah, we were playing same bars and, kind of same open mic nights and stuff like that. And I was doing biology for my major, not too far away from graduating either. I mean, I was starting to get where I was like, at this point I was in my 20s, early 20s. And so, but I just hit this moment to where I was like, I can't do the biology thing, man. So I had the dreadful phone call with my parents, I quit college kind of thing.
Yeah.
And luckily, my parents didn't take it the way most parents did. It wasn't that like, you've been slacking off, you're getting lazy, you're just trying to get out of doing this stuff. I'd never skipped a day of high school. I never skipped a day of college, really. And even no matter how like hard we hit it the night before, I would always wake up and go to class, even if it was miserable. And the main thing is like, dude, my dad didn't get to go to college. And if my dad knew that I was sleeping right now when he was on a roof, like, he would be super disappointed that I was making this choice. So I kind of knew it's like, if you're going to play hard, then you got to put in the work too, Right. So anyway, that kind of validated my experience with my parents in that they believed that I was a hardworking dude. And when I said, I don't think I can do biology anymore, they were like, what do you want to do? And I was like, I really think I want to do music, And they were like, okay, well, what does that look like? Instead of being like, that's what losers do or whatever else you could have done at that situation. So I switched gears and went to Georgia State and started studying music. And that was kind of the beginning of the end, to be completely honest,
Yeah. So from there, you form Koi Bowls in the Fellowship.
Yeah, I was massively a part of the scene in Atlanta at that point. I went out every single night.
So like playing around clubs, like
studio
guitarists.
I mean, just going, you name it, I was there. I mean, if it was a studio, I was trying to hang out there. I was hanging out at Eddie's Attic in the songwriting scene. I was hanging out at Northside Tavern at the blues scene. I was hanging out at Smith's Old Bar in the rock scene. I was hanging out at the Loft, and all of these the vinyl,
just like vintage Atlanta.
Yeah, man, I was everywhere, and I knew somebody in every single scene and was meeting someone new every single night. And a lot of that comes from my dad's personality, just being someone who likes to meet people. Atlanta was killing it at the time, dude. I mean, Sean Costello was alive, killing it at Northside Tavern, playing maybe the best blues guitarist to come alive from my generation. Sadly passed away. Oliver Wood was with King Johnson, who's now with the Wood Brothers. He and I were, buddying around and playing at different places together, doing my thing. And then I formed Koi Bowls in the Fellowship, which was just a conglomerate. I graduated college and I wanted to be a touring musician. Okay. I had never really seen much from being in Thomaston my whole life. I knew there was a bigger world out there, and I wanted to go and see all that and get paid to play music, or not get paid, but go see it anyway. Just go do it. And so I wanted to go and see everything. And I opened up for the Zach Brown Band in the Sky Bar in Auburn, Alabama. I was missing a battery for my pedal board. And I asked John Hopkins, I said, hey, do you have a 9-volt battery that I can borrow? And he said, yeah, come with me. And we walked out to their trailer, and he had a bin of batteries. And I looked around this trailer, and there was like, dude, there was everything that you could possibly, it was almost like an electrician's truck
like
for music.
Store? Yeah.
Yeah, it was like everything you could possibly need and want for war. Like somebody could have came in and blown up half the building and the PA system like fall out into the street, and they would have been able to like, give me 5 minutes.
Yeah.
They would have had a power amp, cables, speakers, and then be like, all right, 3, 2, 1, let's go, and being back at it. And I was just blown away. I was like, dude, you guys are ready. And he was like, oh, this ain't a hobby, And I just remember being like, I want to be with you guys, because the people that I was around, it wasn't so like, hell or high water, we're going to do this. And everybody in that band was like that. Like, this is going to happen. Whether we have to like carve out this thing or whether it just starts showing up, like the road is going to happen for us, and you could feel it. Not only that, but I knew Zach's voice from playing in bars in Carrollton, massively believable, strong voice, and very charismatic person on stage. The fiddle player, everybody in that band was a lion, and so oddly enough, I opened up for the band, and then they called 2 weeks later and said, hey, do you want to open up for us full time? And I was like, whoa, this is awesome. And then they were like, well, and you should leave your keys on stage while you're at it and play with us. And I was like, okay, well, hold on. So I'm going to open up for you guys, and I'm also playing in the band with you guys. And they were like, yeah, if you're cool with that. And I was like, sure, send me the music. I'll figure it out, and wow. That's kind of how it started.
So now you're with Zach Brown Band. You go from Northside Tavern and Eddie's Attic, like all these really awesome bars in the Atlanta music scene, to selling out Fenway. Basically. At what point did you have the realization that, wow, this is bigger than I ever imagined it would be?
Yeah, so we were doing this, like, I think it ended up being 17 weeks total. It was like 11 weeks. We came back home, opened up for REO Speedwagon at Chastain, and then went back out on the road. But we did this radio tour promoting Chicken Fried and the foundation. And I had never been away from home for more than like 5 days my whole life, you know, and we were gone for like forever, it seemed like, you know, all across the United States. And it was so awesome. But it completely reconfigured my entire DNA. I mean, like I let go of an exoskeleton of who I was and rebirthed myself as who I am now. Have seen what I've seen in 17 weeks of travel. You know, it's just, that's the beautiful thing about traveling is you're kind of always a new person when you come back from it, you know, especially that young and this kind of experience. And so anyway, the song had started doing really well on the radio. And our booking was back booked to when we didn't have a song on the radio. So we were playing these clubs and stuff. And then we started opening for a couple of people. And then without really knowing, we did a headlining show, and I walked out on stage and there were like 12,000 people there in this shed. And I went over and like literally walked over to Jimmy, our fiddle player. And I was like, we're headlining. These are all there. Everybody's here for us. He was like, yeah, the booking just switched over. This is what it's like now. And I just remember being like, dude, this is crazy. Like a sea of people are going to be here for us, like for the foreseeable future, you know? And the cool thing is that we had a really stacked album, you know, like this stuff was just starting,
right?
You know, and there were more and more singles to come out on the album. So, you know, the feeling was good. And then when we, you know, got in the studio and did You Get What You Give, and there was Colder Weather and all these other tunes on it, it was like, okay, wow, you know, the sophomore slump is not going to happen to us.
Right.
You know, like we rode our way out of it basically, you know, and recorded our way out of it. So that was the big aha moment, was walking out on stage and just looking at him and him being like, yeah, the booking just changed. This is what it's like. And I was just like, whoa,
yeah,
dude, let's go nuts. You know, I'm like, could not be more stoked, you know?
So you've co-written some huge hits. You just mentioned Colder Weather, Knee Deep, Sweet Annie. Which of those songs has the most personal meaning to you?
Probably Colder Weather. Colder Weather is like a gift from God.
Yeah, that's an amazing song.
It's one of those kind of tunes that I think everybody who was a part of writing it and even recording it and the way it all came together, it just seemed like it's like, this is bigger than us. You know, this is like our like Desperado, or I don't even know what to compare it to. But there's just a certain feeling when that song plays every single time. It's like the air kind of gets, like the barometer drops a little bit in the club or the theater or the arena or the stadium or whatever. It happens every time. You know, it's like, whew, there it is. Yeah. That's the song, you know? So for me, I wrote it in a place where I was going through a personal breakup. And so I wrote the bridge to that tune where it's like, where it's a winding road, where you're in the lost and found.
You're a lover, I'm a runner. Yep.
Yeah. And I was pretty distraught at the time. So the lyrics were, you know, coming from a very true place. And I think, you know, you're a lover, I'm a runner, and we go round and round. I'll love you, but I'll leave you. I don't want you, but I need you. I mean, that has been kind of a crux in my life, is that like, I'll love you, but I'll leave you. I don't want you, but I need you. Like that, I don't want you, but I need you kind of thing is like, has been a very like pull for me as far as like in relationships, because, you know, I was never able to really find anybody who really understood me or really understood like what it is that I wanted to do that ultimately didn't really hurt them, you know, like until I met my wife, and she was like, cool. You know, you're a rock guy. You like to travel. You want to, you know, play music on a high level. She was involved in film and movies, and, you know, was around a bunch of people like myself. And so she got it. And I was like, you're amazing. I love you. You know, you get me, and you're not trying to make me be somebody else, you know? I'm really blessed to have been a part of that song. I mean, I remember writing it and going back to the guys with what I had written and just being like fingers crossed, but man, this feels really good. And even when we recorded it, you know, when Clay sat down at the piano and just kind of magically started playing that intro part, we were like, dude, is this really happening right now? It reminds me of like Dewey Cox, you know, that movie where, they just they get in the studio and they just start playing and it all is just amazing, kind of thing. It was really like that. I mean, he sat down at the piano and played that thing and we all just kind of our jaws dropped and we were like, dude, that's it.
Yeah. So let's get into the children's books. How did you first start writing children's books?
Being on the road we were talking about that 17-week tour,
Yes.
being on the road for so long, I wrote a lot of songs as kind of like mental health. I didn't realize that until I got out and wasn't able to write songs by myself. And in my process, I'd write about stuff that was deeply meaningful to me and maybe shed tears or something, in my room, kind of get it out. A lot of these songs never got completed or never, got turned into being recorded or anything like that. But that's kind of how I would process emotions, from a very young age. Mm-hmm. But it's hard to do that when you're on a bus with 12 people.
Yeah.
There's not really a corner to go. And the next thing you want to do is he's always in the back crying over the guitar, which might have been cool. I don't know, but it just didn't seem like the thing to do at the time, So I kind of started getting to where my mental health, I didn't really have the outlet that I used to have. So I just kind of was well, I'll just start writing. There's so much cool stuff happening. I'll just start writing down at the end of the day, what happened. We're in Chicago, this happened, so I started kind of journaling and writing stuff. And then I decided to start writing down ideas that I had, short stories, just kind of keeping my pencil sharp, really, in the writing world. Mm-hmm. And Matt Mangano, our bass player, who was not our bass player at the time, but is the bass player for the band for the significantly last, long period of time. He was dating a girl who's now married to, and she had a really interesting laugh. And we went out to lunch, and I was being funny, and she was holding her laugh in and doing this snorting thing. And then later I came to find out that she had gotten made fun of as a kid with how she laughed, and she doesn't laugh out loud anymore. And I just remember being like, man, that's maybe one of the weirdest things I've ever, and kind of sad.
Yeah, that's sad.
And so I wrote this, I started to be like, well, would that be a good character in a movie or a story? And then I went on this writing retreat and I wrote this little short rhyming story about this girl named Amy Giggles, who people make fun of her laugh. And I came back and I was over at Zach's house, and he had a couple kids at the time. He has 5 kids now, but I think he had 2 kids or 3 kids, and they're all really young, 1 to 4-ish kind of area.
Yes.
He said, "Did you write anything on the retreat that you went on?" And I was like, well, not really, a couple hooks and everything, but I wrote this really kind of weird, quirky story. And he was like, "Let me hear it." So I read him this weird story, and he was like, "Dude, that would be a killer children's book." I read books to the kids all the time.
Yeah.
And so I was like, wow. But there's one extra part to this. My mentor, this guy named Donnie McCormick, who is this guy who is the godfather of the Northside Tavern blues scene.
Okay.
He had taken me under his wing for the last 5 years before I went on the road. And I spent a lot of time with him. He was a no BS kind of guy. I would write songs and I would go over and I would play them for him. And if he didn't have some kind of the muse didn't strike, he wouldn't be like, "Man, that was a great song," or "You should do some, you should work on the bridge part of it." He would just simply go, "You want to listen to Ray Charles?" And I'd be like, "Sure." But so there was no handheld holding, and it was just real stuff, man. And, Sean Costello, Oliver Wood, John Liebman, there was this whole crew of dudes who were kind of in this weird school of hanging out with him and kind of getting this, he was the realest artist I'd ever met in my life. He lived by nobody else's rules, and he created constantly. And when he passed away, I kind of made a promise to myself that I was going to be like him more than just doing music. So whenever something creative was inspiring me, I was just going to do that. Mm-hmm. And when Zach said, "Man, you should write a children's book," I remember having this vision of Donnie sitting on my shoulder, kind of those old movies, The Devil and the Angel or whatever. But Donnie sitting on my shoulder was this weird part of my soul and subconscious, and him saying, "You never thought it was going to be a children's book, did you?" And I just remember being like, wow, I guess I'm going to write a children's book.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of started on this adventure of, I wanted to be an author, and it seemed like it would be a lot easier to figure out how books work doing a 30-page book over a 400-page
Sure.
book,
Yeah.
you know? So, I mean, dude, there wasn't a lot of thought behind it. It was just kind of, I have a cool story. I'm going to find an illustrator and just kind of start hacking away at this thing. And then it happened,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, yeah. I mean, so now from Amy Giggles, I mean, it's waterfalled. So you've written Will Powers, Where There's a Will, There's a Way, When You're Feeling Sick, all these great kids books. And you just released
Yeah, the 7th one.
Every Amazing Story, which you co-wrote. Now, I love this, with a UGA former wide receiver and Super Bowl champ Malcolm Mitchell, who, by the way, I mean, just put a dagger, in the Falcons' heart in 2016. I don't know if you remember.
I was at that game.
You were at that game. So how did you connect with Malcolm Mitchell, and tell us about your latest book?
So through the state of Georgia, DeCal, the pre-K program in Georgia, asked me a handful of years ago, would I be interested in being commissioned to write a book that went out to 85,000 kids in the pre-K program in Georgia, the state of Georgia, because the lottery in Georgia pays for the pre-K program, which is incredible, man. Like, not a lot of other states do that. So it's very awesome that Georgia takes pride in starting education at a young age, and provides these services for free for so many kids and families. Because once you start learning the research behind all this, like how important early education is, because when we were young, it was like, just keep them alive until you can get them into kindergarten, and then they'll start learning. Now it's like from 0 to 7 is the most foundational part of your entire life, really, So they asked me to write a book. I wrote a book called Behind the Little Red Door. It ended up being very successful, not only with them, but I did other stuff with a company called Lakeshore Learning. We did an educational kit based off the book that was really successful within the early education arena and basically field, And then they said, well, the state of Georgia came back and was like, would you like to do another book? So the following year, I did a follow-up to that book called Can You Touch a Color, which was based off a question my daughter asked me one day. It was like, Dad, can you touch colors? And I was like, whew. I mean, putting on my biology hat, I was like, well, kind of, not really. Color's light, all this stuff. And so I did that book with the state of Georgia, did another kit with Lakeshore Learning that was successful. And then Malcolm did 2 books with the state of Georgia. He was the next author that was in the lineup. And so they had a great experience with me and a great experience with Malcolm. And so they introduced us to each other.
Okay.
And then kind of was like, matchmaking a little bit. They were like, nudge, nudge, would you guys be interested in working together? Malcolm and I hit it off when we first met. He is an incredibly well-spoken, charismatic, extremely funny guy, and you can't help but like the dude.
Okay.
He's just a good dude. And he's one of those kind of guys to where when he starts talking, you can't help but just believe, like, man, this dude really believes in what he talks about. Whether he's talking about football, whether he's talking about his family, whether he's telling a story, whether he's talking about how passionate he is about early education, it's just one of those kind of guys that there's not a lot of fodder going on when he's talking. You just kind of get pulled into his whole zone. And I kind of feel like I'm like that in a different way. I don't know if I'm as eloquently spoken as he is, but I definitely speak from the heart and am passionate, and kind of can't help it. So when we got around each other, it was a lot like that Spider-Man meme. It's like you have 2 Spider-Mans pointing at each other, I think in the meme it's like maybe more than one, but we were both like, you're from Georgia? I'm from Georgia. You write books? I write books. Yeah, I mean, we hit it off, dude, and we collaborated together and wrote this really awesome book that's coming out now. And he's been a pleasure to get to know. He's been super awesome to work with. And he's really, when it talks about like making a dent in the literacy, world, and really being an advocate for how important being able to read is, and how important the statistics are to being at, reading level by third grade.
Yes.
And all stuff, man, Malcolm is really making a dent in a positive way and influencing a lot of kids and hustling, because it's not easy. This children's book stuff, it might seem like it's a kind of easy world, but it is a lot of work to get this stuff off the ground, get the books printed, figure out who to get them to, how to sell them. They're heavy. We're self-publishing a lot of times. So, or you have to sign deals with publishing companies, and some of those deals can be kind of, for lack of better words, archaic, kind of like, record label contracts can be,
right.
So it's a hard world, and Malcolm's fighting the good fight, dude. So, I mean, I can't speak more highly about anybody that I've met in my life in the last 10 or 15 years than that dude,
Awesome, man. So for this book specifically, Every Amazing Story, what's the purpose of the book? Like, what do you want the kids to get out of that?
Yeah,
part?
so we wrote a handful of different stories, and none of them were really hitting on a thing. And we were like, okay, let's start from the top. You're from Georgia, I'm from Georgia. We write books. I write books, you write books. And then I was like, what if we wrote a book about how to write a book? And he was like, dude. So like a story about a story. And I was like, yeah, kind of, And so we started scratching around at it. And it was like, what more do we have to offer, at least from our first collaboration with each other, than what we really know how to do is write stories. And we can teach you how to write a story too. So in the book, we teach them about like what a character is, what a plot is, what like a story arc is, what like conflict resolution is. And we're the main characters of the story. So we're like in a cartoon-ish version of the story, being buddies and going on this adventure together to write a story. And then the story ends up writing, and then you get to read with the story that we wrote about us climbing up to the top of Mount Storymore. And we have to pass these like karaoke singing koalas who are guarding the mountain, and these cartwheeling frogs who try to like ninja chop you on your way up, in order to find this hidden book called Every Amazing Story, which has every amazing story written in it.
So family is obviously incredibly important to you. So raising two daughters with your wife, Kylie, how has fatherhood kind of shaped or changed your perspective like at this stage of your career?
Oh man, it's everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even think I really knew what love or life was until I had kids, I'm incredibly proud of my kids. I'm incredibly proud of my wife. She's a great mother. I'm very blessed that my kids are healthy. I do a lot of work with different programs, Sunshine on a Rainy Day, Make-A-Wish, and try to give back to these programs. And you just realize like how, man, life can be so brutal, especially to families where, they have sick kids. And I've had friends who've lost kids and stuff like that. So every day, man, I wake up and I count my blessings that, they have their health and I have my health, and they're moving forward. And I try to, these days, man, I just try to live in the now as much as I possibly can. I mean, it seems like everything in the world is trying to take that away from you, whether it's the news or your phone or emails or just, whatever else. But my goal in life these days is just to try to be as present and in the now as I can with my kids and my wife, and it's hard, but it's like, that's the good fight for me now, is just to make sure that, when they say, Dad, what do you think about this? I'm not like, hold on a second, let me finish this, because my dad never said that to me. Right. He was always like, yeah, what do you need? Because my dad and my mom were great teachers, And so it's just a whole new part of life that I'm so grateful for, and I hope I'm good at it,
Yeah. So you actually have some big performances coming up, including the Sphere in Las Vegas. So what can fans expect from that upcoming show at the Sphere? Or what are you most geeked up about that?
I haven't been yet, so I haven't been to the facility.
Me either. I've just heard about it.
Yeah, I've seen videos and I've read a lot about it. I love technology and I love big experiences. Like, hey, dude, there's this state-of-the-art facility. There's only one in the world, and we're going to get to play it. And, Zach has very much, taken this on as like, I want this to be as much of an experience and self-expression of like who I am and what the band is as possible. So like, so far it's going to be like, you took the Zac Brown band and just like imploded it onto the walls via visuals and music, which sounds awesome to me. You know what I mean? Like, and Zac is maybe one of the most, if not the most creative. Dude, he's incredibly smart and knows so much about so many different things, not only from like fishing to like outdoor stuff to like cooking to like, he's just one of these kind of dudes who's like a Renaissance guy. So his intelligence level and his creativity with this is like a perfect recipe for him to get in there and just like really kind of go nuts and bring a bunch of worlds together. I'm extremely excited about it. I feel like it's going to be one of those, at this point, there's so few of artists who've been in that room to where it's like, this is definitely a big moment in time to be a part of that, starting legacy or whatever of it. So I'm very excited about that. And, you're taking music and technology and visuals, which I'm a huge movie buff, and combining all this stuff to this like mega, overall experience. So, I'm in, dude. Like it checks all the boxes for me,
All right. So I'm going to switch over and do a rapid fire set of questions.
Yeah. Cool.
Favorite guitar solo to play?
The intro to It's Not My Cross to Bear by the Allman Brothers.
Okay. When you're on the road, what Southern food can you not live without?
Man, we don't get much Southern food. That's kind of a hard thing. But I will say this, green beans done right is something that I will never pass up. My grandmother used to make these green beans, dude. And even as a kid, I would eat a mountain of these things. Okay. And still to this day, that's probably, when done right, dude, I can put down buckets of that stuff.
Okay, so what are green beans done right? What, is it like garlic and butter? Like what is it?
Well, I don't know. It has a very vinegary kind of tone to it, where there's definitely some kind of pork, fat, bacony kind of realm going on in there. And then there's also like a little bit of a kind of like vinegar texture or taste to where it's like tarty almost or something. I don't know how to explain it, but there's a part of it that's the part that gets me though, it's that there's like a remaining flavor to the green beans to where you're like, dang, what is that? Let me taste one more to see if I can taste what that is again. And then like 7 bowls later, you're like, oh my God, I'm going to have a green bean come out my nose if I don't watch it, So.
Okay. Favorite artist outside of Zac Brown band that you've ever played with?
Ooh, Dolly Parton by far is the biggest moment. We played with Steven Tyler, played with Greg Allman, huge, John Mayer. Dave Grohl was the most like, I can't believe this is happening. Like childhood 16-year-old, like, holy smokes, this is real. Ended up becoming like really good buddies with him and really kicked and I hit it off with him as a friend. And he's a very sweetheart guy and he's a storyteller. Okay. So we hit that off when we was like, you tell stories, I tell stories, you like rock and roll. So, and then Dolly Parton is the most kind of talk about like sweeping the air out of the room kind of thing. Like when we inducted her into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and we did a rehearsal with her. And when she walked in, it was like, that's her. Yeah. Like, whoa, dude. And then the most surreal moment was I was sitting in a chair getting makeup done for an award show, and James Taylor was sitting down in the corner of the room on his butt, like sitting on the floor with his legs crossed applesauce with his Olsen guitar playing There's No Business Like Show Business in a chord melody style like arrangement. And I just remember being like, dude, what is happening? I am not in Thomaston, Georgia anymore. And James Taylor is playing There's No Business Like Show Business in the corner, and I'm getting makeup done. Yeah. I don't wear makeup, right. It was just so surreal, man.
That's insane.
Yeah.
If you are going to go out for a big night with Kylie in the ATL, you're celebrating something like the release of a new book or a new tour date. Where are you guys going to celebrate? Like, what's your favorite celebratory spot?
A couple places we have been doing. Umi is like kind of our kind of like celebratory date night.
Yep.
Anniversary kind of thing. But recently we've been going to Little Alley Steak, right? Okay, yeah. So we've been going there, and man, my wife's a vegetarian, so in a weird way. Steakhouses are amazing places to date vegetarians because they have such a large selection of sides.
Great sides, yeah.
Yeah, so she goes and gets these great sides, and then I'm not really a steak guy, but a lot of times these places have killer chicken and fish.
Yeah.
So to be that weirdo, we go in and eat everything but steak at these, at a nice steakhouse. But I mean, so they have this branzino fish that's there. And dude, I mean, I might go down as top 5 meals of all time for me.
Yeah.
Is that branzino, and they have 3 different ways they make it. And so far, I've had 2 different ways with one's with spinach and mashed potatoes, and another one's like bok choy or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's like kind of different fixins, as we would say in the South, But I mean, I dream about it.
Yeah.
I mean, I literally go there, eat it, and the next day wake up and be like, what do I have to do to get that back in my life again?
Yeah. You've been around the world. You've been around the South. When you retire at some point, if you could retire anywhere in the South, where would it be and why?
There's 2 answers to this.
Okay.
There is Charleston, probably Isle of Palms.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Okay. You're a coastal man.
Well, I only say this is because my wife really likes the beach. I'm not such a beach guy. But if it was up to me, I'd buy like 500 acres in the middle of Georgia somewhere with a pond and a bunch of 4-wheelers and just get redneck, dude, and just, shooting guns.
Like a
and
Graceland kind of situation?
Yeah, just
Awesome.
get weird, man, I mean, probably have tractors and just go dig holes for no reason, just because it's my land and I can do that if I want to. Yeah. But my wife's not very, she likes being where there's more stuff available.
She's not into excavation.
Yeah. Well, she might be. That might be how I get her there, right? But she just likes being around more people. And I grew up kind of in the middle of nowhere, so that's kind of. So probably somewhere on the beach. For her. And for me personally, though, the South that is like out of everywhere I've ever traveled, the place that's the most attractive or calls me back and everything is the North Georgia mountains.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, like outside of Helen, Hiwassee, Trey Mountain, any of that, like foothills of the Appalachians kind of things.
Yeah.
Dude, I really feel like I can finally breathe and I'm connected with nature, and like the whole like circle of life thing is kind of flowing through me. Whereas when I go to the beach, or any other place, if I go to Arizona or if I go to Colorado, I don't feel like it's like fully kind of resonating the same way. And I don't know if it's because we went camping there so much when I was in college and I'm just familiar with it as much, but there's something that feels like so much more tangible about that area. Like every time I go camping up there, dude, I'm in the creek the whole time. I'm washing, I take shower or, bathe in the creeks. I'm like in the waterfalls. When I go to Colorado, I'm like, dude, I'm going to fall down this mountain and die if I do that, so it's so much more risky feeling, So for me, the, somewhere in the mountains of North Georgia would probably be a good retirement place, but I've never actually thought about that. It would be hard pressed for me to think I would ever live outside the South, though. Yeah. I mean, I'm such a Southern guy.
Well, you could always do both, right? You could have a place at the beach and a place in the mountains. And kind of
that would be perfect world. But I can't see me living in California, or I can't see me living in New York or anywhere outside of the South. Really, I think I'm kind of like through and through Southern.
Yeah, homegrown.
I'm very grateful, and gratitude is something that I work really hard to stay connected to. Life is very short, as you know, with this podcast and, and your reasons. And I don't take anything for granted, really, that I can, I'm human And so there's that, but I really, I'm so grateful for the guys in the band, my friendship with them, for my friendship with Zach and my creative, contributions to the band, and his ability to be a leader of the band, and the guys in the band, and Caroline, and everybody. I'm an only child, so I have brothers and sisters now, man, and it's something that I'm extremely grateful for. And the fans, just the people who keep coming out to the shows, and I'm so incredibly grateful for that. And then the ability to try to, have somewhat of a platform to turn around and be a part of the positive by, being dedicated to, advocating for literacy and education and writing these books and using my platform to try to be a part of the positive by helping kids and teachers out and families and everything else is something that, never my wildest dreams that I thought that I would live such an elaborate life. And it's not materialistic, but just like getting to be a part of all of these people's lives and being, to experience so much. I just never thought that any of this would happen, man. And I'm so unbelievably grateful for everybody who's been a part of it. And I'm very excited about, and still ramped up about the future, man. There's a lot to come. I don't feel like in any means that I've creatively, I feel like I'm just getting started on understanding music, in different ways, and understanding storytelling, and, using my full person to not only write stories, but I do keynote speaking and stuff like that now, so man, I feel like I'm just getting started, and I'm 46 years old, and, if anybody listens and they listen to the band, thank you from the bottom of my heart and from our hearts, because, it's from you guys that we are able to do the things that we do. And, and I don't think any of us take that for granted. I know for sure that I don't. So and I'm grateful for you taking time with me, man, to let me tell my story, and be kind of, foolish and silly on here, but, get passionate and everything else. It's like, I think the older I get, the more I just realize how you got to make the best of every moment. And, podcasts like this and getting to share my story is something that I'm grateful for. And I'm grateful to be alive and healthy, man,
Yeah. No, man. And look, I'm very grateful for you sitting down with me today. If someone listening today wants to, check out your books, your music, your children's books, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, koibowls.com. If you go there, you can pretty much find anything and everything that you're looking for. All of the music that I write is on streaming platforms, so like Apple and Spotify if you're looking for Koi Bowls and the Fellowship stuff. I also have written some children's albums, so if you want to get down and dig on some cool not Baby Shark tunes with your kids that won't drive you crazy.
Everyone could use a break from Baby Shark.
Yeah, so there's some of that stuff out there too. If you're looking for the books, they're at koibowls.com. So that's kind of the hub for everything.
Yeah.
So a lot to come too, man. I just started a foundation, so I'm going to be doing some nonprofit work, which awesome. I'm really excited about.
What's the name of your foundation?
The Koi Bowls Foundation.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll be able to get more involved in literacy as well. So everybody, if you're out there listening, tune in a little later when we get this thing started, because we're going to make some movement and give some cool stuff to some people in need at some point too, so
awesome.
Yeah, man.
Look, man, thank you again for inviting me to your home today, and thank you all for listening to Retire Southern. You can find this episode and more on our website, retiresouthern.com. Follow us on social media at Retire Southern, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And until next time, remember, don't wait for retirement to start living. Thanks, Coy.
Thank you.